Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hala-Days Episode 4. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I am very impassioned about. And as you can see in this slide here, we're going to be talking about Paragon Plate. Specifically, we're going to be defending Paragon Plate from the people who believe that this is a poor choice for a chess piece, especially in Warrior, compared to something like Grains, or even people have been considering, I think, Tunic. So that's what we're talking about today. Remember again that everything in this series is about specifically through the context of my preparation for calling Kansas City. So while this video is a defense of Paragon Plate, it is not necessarily what I'm going to end up on. I think I'll end up on it, but I am just trying to do well at the calling, and if it ends up, for example, Pro Tour happened this last weekend, and I forget his name, but he's from Poland, and he did pretty well with Hala, and he was playing Grains, it was very defensive. I have no problem playing a defensive version of this hero. I just want to do well, but I also would like to illustrate for people that this is a good chess slot, and they wouldn't put the yellow dot in the bottom left corner if it wasn't. So that's what we're doing in this video today. Again, like I mentioned, Pro Tour was this last weekend. I didn't get to go. I had some life stuff going on. But I was hoping that we would see some more Mastery Pack Warrior stuff. It seems that, however, that will be happening next week. I might take next week off, depending on if there's not enough spoilers out yet. We're kind of in a holding pattern where a lot of my testing, feel I've developed a lot of interesting thoughts about the hero, a lot of interesting, I guess, opinions, and come to some conclusions that I think are doing well for me so far in testing. But until we know more about the Mastery Pack, I can't really do anything in terms of developing further. And I've kind of made all of these will have been the basic videos. So it's kind of like I might have to take a week off, but we'll see. So without further ado, let's talk about Paragon Plate.
Now, hold on. I was pretty hasty in my making of this video, so I'd like to take this second to explain what Paragon Plate does before we go further. So, Paragon Plate is a Timber 2 chess piece, and it says, attack reaction, tap this, remove a +1 counter from an attacking sword you control, gain a resource. I think the attack reaction part is pretty important. It does not say instant speed, which I think would be obviously infinitely more powerful. Just wanted to come in and say that really quick. Okay, back to the video.
This is an interesting debate I've seen, especially if you join any Purple Discord discussions about Hala. You will see people bashing it. You'll see me posting the Norman Rockwell picture, talking about how I think it's actually better than Grains. But again, I don't mean to bash Grains' power. I said in a previous video that I think it's one of the best designed cards of Flesh and Blood ever, and I like using it a lot. But I think specifically for Hala, I think that Paragon Plate is just so interesting, so good, and it has very interesting play lines. So we're going to have to obviously look at things. These are examples that have come up in my games. I've taken note of them and wanted to demonstrate them. But as far as testing, I've tested way more with Paragon Plate than with Grains, because obviously, to me, it seems that Grains testing, especially if you've played a Warrior ever, it's easy to do and it's easy to theorize about because it's all theoretical. It's all, if they let it hit, I'll just pay for the resource. If they do blank, I'll do this. If I have a resource at the start of my turn or after I draw 4 cards, I'll be able to block with all 4 cards and still swing, right? So in testing, it's a lot more difficult to see the value of Paragon Plate without having played games. So I would like to demonstrate the value of that now. Here we have a hand that is relatively common, actually. Let us pretend that we only have 4 cards, or maybe Red Edict of Steel was in our arsenal and we had to block with a defense reaction or something, but these are the cards that are available to us, right? And that, let's say hypothetically that even if it's not Red Edict of Steel, that you have something that Sharpens, maybe you had a flurry token already and you just played a sharpened card, or you sharpened with Hala's hero ability, whatever it is, that this is what we have access to us. Now let us pretend that we have no equipment, right? So the best, most efficient use of these resources is not necessarily, you can't really maximize your resource use out of this if you don't have one of the equipments. And that is because that either way, even if you say played Edict of Steel, sharpened with Hala's hero ability, then swung your sword twice, you would still have one resource left over. And that ends up being you're pitching 2 cards for 10 damage, right? So 2 cards, 10 damage, or you can play all 4 cards for 14 and still have 2 floating resources. That is where something like Grains is, I'm over here now. That's where something like Grains is really good, because you can use those 2 resources that you otherwise would have, right? That you can say you have full tempo, right? We're just assuming that they didn't do anything that made you have to consider blocking with one of these cards. That you'll be able to use every part of the buffalo here, so to speak, that you are paying into Grains. Say they let you hit, and you get to pay into the resource on the defense reaction with the display of craftsmanship, and then on their last swing for 5, they let it hit again and you get to pay. So you got to use all of your resources. So it's the same amount of damage. It's just that you are getting to delay those resources by creating tokens that put resources into your pitch zone in the next turn. Right, so to walk through the actual line, since I didn't do it, what we're doing is we're going to sharpen for +1 and a flurry token with Red Edict of Steel. Then we're going to pitch for 4 go again with a second attack and 2 floating. The 2 floating is where we play Display of Craftsmanship, and then we can pitch into the Grains of Blood Spill if it hits, and then we can use 1 more resource to attack, having 1 floating, so that if they let it hit again, we can get that extra resource. Right. So that's about, I would say, I mean, you can obviously do all sorts of things with this hand. I mean, I'm going to play a video later that will harken back to what I'm talking about here. But you can do all sorts of things with this hand. But if you were just like, this is, let's say I drew these 4 cards up, the opponent blocked with their entire hand last time, that this is the most amount of damage you can put out. Obviously, you could check my math on that. But this is how I would play it if I was just trying to output as much damage as possible. So again, kind of to demonstrate, the difference between Grains and no equipment is very little, except for that Grains is a legendary equipment, so you get more out of it, right? Well, what happens if we were to have Plate? Well, this is the power of Plate, in my opinion. And this is what I like about Hala, and this is what I was alluding to in the first video when I was talking about Hala, is that you have so many options when you're playing Plate instead, especially with this hand. So let's take a look. The option 1 with Plate is that you are only going to play 3 cards, or play 2 and pitch 1. So you would do the same thing. You're playing Red Edict of Steel, you get the flurry token, and you're pitching Swordmaster's Path for the 4 go again. Then you're playing Display of Craftsmanship with your 2 resources, right? So you're adding the total of 5. 1 is a +1 counter, right? And then you can react to take that resource off, and then it goes down to 8, and then you swing again for 4. So ultimately, you pitched 1 card for 12 damage, and you have this card as an arsenal. Now, what do I think is most powerful about this? Well, with this hand back here, with this blue card, we got this blue card and we're thinking we have to, I mean, we just have these resources, we need to use them, right? But with Plate, you get to consider this as a free space, as it were, that if you only had 1 blue card, let's say we drew up these 3 cards, and then the last card there is a defense reaction, let's say it's Sink Below, right? That 3 cards in a turn cycle for 12 damage. First of all, it equates to 4 damage per card. On top of that, if your last card is Sink Below and it blocks for 4, that turn cycle ends up being 16 value per turn, right? So yes, in theory, you are losing 2 damage. In theory. But you are also pitching 1 less card. On top of it, that last card that you need does not need to be a blue card. It does not need to be anything, really. I mean, you are essentially able to, again, I might beat a dead horse here, but utilize every part of the buffalo in that you get to have a 0 resources left in your pitch zone at the end of the turn. You get to either arsenal a card, or let's say it's something again like, let's say it's a blue card, right? There's option 2, which is to you sharpen for +1 and a flurry token, same thing, but then you pitch to Hala's hero ability. Now, this is where it's extremely important to note that plate plus Hala's hero ability is probably the only time that plate is playable. That's why it's in the armory deck, right? Because you're pitching 3 resources to negate the effect of plate, right? So we then do the same exact thing where we play Display of Craftsmanship. We take the resource by removing a counter. Except for that, it ends up being a swing for 9 and a swing for 5, just like before. Why is that? Because in total we had 3 counters at one point. We removed it down to 2 counters. So 5 plus 4, 9. And then having those 2 counters on the sword, paying 1 for 5. Ultimately, this ends up being 2 cards for 14 damage, which, if we go back, we'll see is the same amount, or we're pitching 2 cards, is the same amount of damage, except for that we end with 2 vigor tokens in a perfect world. Maybe let's say they didn't block anything, right? 2 cards for 14. I've been told that plate actually loses me damage. How could this be? How could it be that we're pitching 2 cards and we're playing 4 cards and we still get 14 damage? This is where I'm going to ask this question, and this is where I'm actually I want to talk with people about it, because I've not scripted this video. The other videos I have scripted, I just kind of made these kind of play lines, and I've been thinking about this a lot. I just want to ask, what is the value of a resource? Because everyone wants to say that a counter is losing you damage, but they're not acknowledging the value of a resource. In this same example back here, that 2 vigor tokens, one could argue that a vigor token, actually, I mean, it's not arguable, it is just factual, that 1 resource on a turn cycle would equal 3 damage with Hala. Why is that? Because it says 1 resource for a sword swing. So we know for a fact that 1 resource equals 1 sword swing. This is where I would like to discuss again that if we have 2 vigor tokens left over, of course that opens up so many possibilities for the next turn. But this is where I would like to play a video for us now. Let me go find that. Okay, so I'm going to be a bit of a React Andy here, but this is, as I'm sure many people know, is Jacob Clements. He just won the Pro Tour on Mario, and I just want to play. I found this video this interview on day 2 very. I connected with what he said a lot, essentially. So let's watch this.
Look, it's working. Here's the proof. Also working for you, Arachne Marionette. This has been a hero you've been on for quite some time now. Certainly dalliances in other places, but it seems like this is a hero that really speaks to you. What is it about Marionette that keeps bringing you back to this hero?
One thing that I really like about Marionette is that in Flesh and Blood, and I mean, this would be reductive to say about any hero, but there's sometimes a sentiment that you can use maths to determine the turn cycle value of your line, like the block plus damage presented, and then do whichever line is the highest. And as I say, this would be, of course, be reductive on any hero. But the fact that Mario constantly has to balance that against marking the opponent, against the daggers that you have in play, against disruption, like, he's like such a clear case of it being so much more complicated than just the numbers you're presenting. Like, when it's worth taking, like, a step back, or like not pushing the maximum damage this turn to get your opponent marked, and these cycles of transforming and having to interact with the like fact that you don't know which agent you're going to transform into, and like planning your turns like to take advantage of whichever agent you get. It's like so deep and like elusive to master.
Yeah.
Okay, so essentially, the reason I found this to be extremely, I connected with it a lot because that even though he's talking about Mario here, he says it would be, of course, extremely reductive to talk about any hero. So really how I felt is that he was talking about any hero here. And what I felt, especially in relation to Hala, is that it is so reductive to, especially on a mid-range character, if that's how you're building her, or even fatigue or even aggro, that if you are trying, especially in the modern era, if you're trying to reduce to say that any hero and their cards and their abilities and their activated weapon swings and whatever it is, that it would be reductive to say that you could take, just the math of something. Clement says maths because he's a redcoat. That you would say these things are, this is a higher value, or you can't play this because it loses you value, right? That Paragon Plate, the thing that it does is open up possibilities, and it allows you to be a more creative player. When I see Grains, I know for a fact that this is the way they're going to play, and yes, it is strong, and it is good, and it is proven to be good. It's just that it doesn't allow you to express yourself as much, in my opinion. And that is proven with that first example, which is like there were 2 lines of play there. Whereas with Grains, which I think is better for a generic warrior or just any other warrior, but with Hala specifically, her hero ability says that you are allowed to use this for a resource without really losing a card out of deck. So it's not really like, yes, we're pitching more cards, we're playing more cards, or whatever it is, but we're not really losing damage because it was on our hero ability that it basically said, if you have Paragon Plate equipped, this is a free resource. My hero ability says either +1, +2, or +1 resource, which I would evaluate at the very minimum of +3. What is the value of a resource here? What's the value of ending with 2 vigor tokens, right? That, let's say theoretically, it's all theory, right? That's what I dislike about the argument for Grains only, is that the theory of it is that it's going to net you better and more opportunity. But these are all ifs, right? That Plate allows you to play without having to worry about what the opponent does. And it allows you to do more creative, more interesting things. So let's look at another line. I guess I can stay over here. So let's assume that we ended with a flurry token on the board. We played Olay, we put Sharp Incline in our arsenal, and we blocked with a card, right? So that's how we got here. So we have a flurry token, but we don't have an equipment. So how are we going to utilize this? Well, with Sharp Incline, of course, we would sharpen, and because we have a counter, it's for free. So we get to swing 0 for 4 with Go Again and a flurry attack. Then with that display of craftsmanship, we'd pitch a blue. Let's just say it's Beck and Steel. We would pitch that blue, and then we would use our last resource to swing. So ending up, we have what essentially evaluates to what we would colloquially call a 3-card 14. Realistically, it's a 4-card 14, but on this turn cycle, it is a 3-card 14, and we have an arsenal for Swordmaster Shine. We cannot play Swordmaster Shine because we only ever got up to 2 +1 counters, meaning it would cost a resource, and we wouldn't have had the extra resource to swing for 5. So realistically, the resource always ends up for 5 anyway, but in this case, we get to arsenal Swordmaster Shine. Again, I'm going to say that, I put both up here because again, I'm trying to be fair and genuine in my evaluation of these things. And again, as I said last video, we have no... A flurry token doesn't exist without expunging a card from your deck. So realistically, this is a 4-card total play, but in theory it is a 3-card evaluation on the cycle, on the turn cycle, on the hand cycle that we're in. So yeah. So with Grains, what can we do? We can't do anything different. essentially. I mean, right? That, depending on, I mean, maybe in the way that the board state is, or the strange way that, hands play out sometimes, maybe we pitch Swordmaster Shine to uh, make it worth a resource. Maybe we don't think we're sharpening. Maybe we know our pitch stack, especially in these more fatigue heavy lists. Maybe we know this is better if it's on the bottom of the deck. So you get the way to use that there, but realistically, you're still only coming out with 3 cards, which is 4 cards, 14, and you're arsenaling. Again, it's all relative. It would be disingenuous for me to not talk about, like, well, if we had an extra resource from the previous turn, which we don't know that we would, but let's say we did, then it is a 4 card. I mean, add 5 because you had that floating resource and you were allowed to play Swordmaster Shine. So realistically, it'd be a 4 card, 5 card, 19, which is just under 4 value per card. Then with plate, everything becomes a lot different, and again, it's much more interesting, in my opinion. And it ends up letting you expunge your whole hand. Now, is this better? Well, realistically, you can just do the same thing as if you had grains, except by having plate, you are opening yourself up to another option, right? So you play Sharp Incline, swinging the first Zenith Blade for free. So that's 4, go again with the Flurry token, same thing. Then it gets interesting because you can then pitch Beck and Steel to play Display of Craftsmanship. Now, this +1 counter is extremely important, right? Because before we just had to use our extra resource to swing for 5 on our attack or whatever, right? In this example, that you then get to use that resource because you have 2 counters now, and Swordmaster Shine would only cost 1. You then get to play Swordmaster Shine, pumping it up to 14. Then you take the extra counter off that display added, right? So essentially you're paying 1 resource for 4. Think of it like that, right? And so you're then swinging because you discounted Swordmaster Shine enough to play it, then removed a counter to get your resource back. You then get to have played your whole hand here, and you're attacking for 13 and then attacking for 4, right? So you end up with a 4 card, which is a 5 card, 17. On the turn cycle, 4 card 17, that's extremely powerful. Again, in terms of the context of the whole game, it's 5 cards, but in presenting something, no one's hand would be able to block, unless it's a Guardian probably. Like, say you're playing Syndra. No one's hand is going to be able to block this out entirely, right? So this to me kind of explains, like, you could just do the entire previous example, which is Arsenal Swordmaster Shine. But because you have this available to you, you can press your advantage to go in for a kill shot that otherwise wouldn't exist, right? So where this was 14 damage, this 1 resource, you didn't lose. In fact, you gained... You didn't lose value. You actually gained value, right? That you didn't lose damage. You gained damage. So ultimately, my question again is, what is the value of a resource? Again, I'm not against grains at all. I just have yet to see what it would do that is not theoretical. That every game I've played with it, I'm like, yeah, it does the same thing every time, which is good. It's powerful. It's really strong. But to say that plate is strictly worse because blank, blank, or blank, it's entirely disingenuous in my opinion. And I think, again, this is the source that everyone cites the most. But this is a playable hand with plate that you can block with, let's say, 3 cards and play this hand because you play Sharp Incline, you play Edict of Steel, your first sword is free, you tap Paragon Plate to get your resource. It ends up being a 2-card 8. A genuine 2-card 8, actually. So I guess it just kind of annoys me is that, with no equipment, or, unless you had an energy, 3 energy counters on Tunic, that, like, this is not a playable hand with grains, right? I'm just saying that things end up being, and again, I don't want to be disingenuous, that maybe you have a resource floating from last turn, and that's how you got to play this hand. But I just think that ultimately, I am a plate defender, and I think really strong players will be able to recognize this. Granted, also, I think I've seen a lot of people saying that, like, plate becomes way better if we have better sharpened cards, and which I think will be revealed with Mastery Pack Warrior. Hopefully I don't have to grab this video later and edit me proving myself wrong, because again, we're in a holding pattern. We don't really have any cards, but I think plate will only get better. But it is good now, and I hope this demonstrates to people that that is true. That really you don't lose value. You don't lose damage if you don't want to. You just don't have the extra benefit of having rolled over resources, right? Which to some people I'm sure is like, you know, if the resource at minimum is 3, you technically are gaining more, right? But what is 2 better than 1? Is 2 Vigor tokens better than 1? You know, these are just questions I think that all sorts of stuff to ask. And again, this is kind of a more shotgun video. I had less planned. I just wanted to come on here and proselytize for this awesome chess piece. It's really fun. It's one of my favorite parts of Hala. And I hope that, especially if you can't afford grains, I hope you see that you buying the Armory deck netted you an awesome chess piece that is totally worth the price of entry. So yeah, if you're a Paragon Plate believer, say it in the chat. If you think my math is wrong, if you think I'm stupid, I mean, genuinely, I want to, again, I'm trying to make these videos so that I get better. If someone, you know, types 10 paragraphs, I'm going to read all of it. I want to improve myself, improve my understanding, and see, like, is grain strictly better for calling Kansas City? We can't know until more Mastery Pack spoilers come out. But, like, you know, you got me. So, thanks for watching. I feel like I got heated. My demeanor was bad, but I just really like this chess piece, and I don't want people to think it's bad or feel like it's poor. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Please interact with me, please.